The Ward County Sheriff's Office says an inmate assaulted 4 officers on Saturday, injuring 2 and sending 1 to the hospital for a broken nose. Court records indicate that a corrections officer tried to retrieve a lunch tray from Matthew Richards, and when he entered the cell, Richards struck him in the face with the tray. The CO said Richards spit on him and other officers who tried to restrain him. A captain with the Sheriff's Office tells us the officer struck in the face suffered a broken nose, and another was injured on the hand and ankle. Officers tased and used a pepper ball device to subdue Richards. The 21-year-old was in custody for an incident last month where investigators say he threatened neighbors and brandished a firearm at police.